Hello, welcome back to Madrona's Pulse Teachings. I am Iris. I'm trying to sit outside with you, and it just got windy as I started talking, of course. We are in our astrology of the week ahead with this video. We're talking about August 25th to, drum roll, September 1st. September is upon us. Welcome to Eclipse season. We have just had our Virgo New Moon, our first of two Virgo New Moons. It is a very dynamic Virgo season. Our first lunar eclipse is going to be on September 7th. We'll be talking about that next week. But just knowing it is a dynamic time. The Virgo New Moon could have landed, it depends on your chart, of course, but we're talking about the astrology of this time when the outer planets are all talking with each other very directly. This week we actually have Pluto and it's come into its exact trine with Sedna. That's going to be on the 27th, I believe. Yep. And then on the 28th we have Neptune and Uranus in their exact sextile. So that, it's dynamic energy. It's a lot of energy. All of the outer planets were talking with the Virgo New Moon. They will be talking with our eclipses. So just taking care. However, this is Virgo season. And so you really, really want to honor what your body needs, what your body is telling you, especially with the outer planet energy right now. We don't want to resist. If our body is telling us to rest, or it's taking us out of life for a moment, or it's just slowing us down, or maybe it's speeding up, but you do want to honor your body's needs right now because there's a lot going on in here. There's a lot going on out there, and it's all moving through. And the body psyche is the site where this is actually happening in us. So just taking care, slowing down if and when you need to. That is an important foundation of moving through this Virgo season, because we are literally having a massive clearing of our Virgo habits, of even potentially how we've thought about Virgo. I am really, really pushing the reclaiming of the wild, witchy Virgo energy, because it gets so limited the way that Virgo gets positioned in mainstream astrology. But it is a lot. And so just knowing that you may need to slow down, you may need to take care. Now let's look at there's a few aspects going on that I want to mention, but especially it is important to know that this whole week is shifting us towards Saturn. It's in its retrograde and it will re-enter Pisces, sign of archetype of the ocean, on September 1st. Okay, so we're building up to that as it is moving into a different sign, especially the final degree of Pisces for the final time in 30 years, while it's been making its journey with Neptune, who will also come back into Pisces later on. It's very significant. It's a big moment. This is, we have really been working with Saturn in Aries, realigning those structures of the self, re-understanding what the self is. Who are you? Who am I? These questions are not defined yet. And now, as Saturn goes back into Pisces, that is back into the ocean. It is back to the 29th degree of Pisces. It will go back towards the 25th degree. And then it will station direct, and it will be in February of 2026 when we have Saturn back in Aries. Like, we got to have some celebrations when they're finally in that. Hopefully we'll be having celebrations when they're in their exact conjunction, Neptune and Saturn, in 2026. But this is a big moment. It's a moment to mark in Saturn's journey. And so that happens at the end of this week. And that is also a big energy shift. And you're probably going to be feeling that. It is from that primal fire into yin, surrender of the self. That is not always easy for Saturn. Ocean, void, divine consciousness. So just knowing that shift is coming this week. Again, that's probably going to affect emotions, body, energy, dreams for sure. And also this week we have Venus, sweet Venus, enters Leo, fire sign Leo. Now, that said, any planet that enters Leo at this particular time comes into a direct conversation with Pluto and the other outer planets as well. So, on the one hand, Venus is leaving, Cancer. She's going into Leo. Venus in Leo wants to be able to celebrate her values. She wants to find joy in her values. That said, Pluto says there needs to be a little bit of reflection on those values. And so this is about, Venus, she just wants to live her heart-centered values in Leo. She wants to have joy. She wants joy to come from her heart. She wants to be seen, not to be seen, but she is okay being seen, living her joy, this Venus in Leo. But there has to be something perhaps saying, make sure they're your values. Make sure they're your heart's values. Make sure they're not values that you've been taught to perform or put on. Make sure that they're truly the authentic self. That's the love, folks, that the dogs just showed you, that joy that only dogs can fully teach us about, is what Venus in Leo wants. And yet she needs to come opposite Pluto. We start this week out as she's moving through that, building with it. She's, of course, also going to be talking to the other outer planets as well, sextiling Uranus and Sedna in a trine with that Saturn before it moves into Pisces and Neptune. And so just knowing that we're feeling that outer planet conversation very personally, again, because Venus is now talking to all of those planets as we start the week out. And also, you could have some push and pull. You could have some push and pull around your values, but just remember, whatever's coming up, whether it's in a relationship or work or just your own relationship with yourself or trying to decide what to do, honor the heart's values, but make sure it's truly your heart and not what you've been taught you're supposed to want. And also this week, starting out, we have a lovely air trine between Mars in Libra and Pallas Athena, who is retrograde in Aquarius. This is just lovely air energy, which can take us into our thoughts. It absolutely might be relational. It's lovely energy to lean into those relationships early this week where you do not have to perform, where you can just talk about things you love, like astrology and energy, and you don't need to be labeled as woo-woo because it's the only way it's acceptable. It's just you. Just allow yourself any of those conversations should they present, because Pallas Athena in Aquarius can just bring in that. She wants to bring in the like-minded souls that our higher self can just commune with. And Mars and Libra is bringing in that relational one-on-one way. Also just embracing any flowing of ideas, whether it's for a project or just something you have to sit down and write. If the muse strikes, you want to go with it because that air energy is flowing. And then midweek is when we are going to have those exact kind of conversations between Pluto and Sedna. We've been working with this trine between Pluto and Sedna. I have a workbook available. I will link that below, because now is a lovely moment to do some reflections with it. This is especially powerful and potent for healing deep stuff, karmic, complex childhood trauma type of stuff, archetypal wounds, in a way that is truly about empowerment. There is nothing in this trine with Sedna and Pluto that needs to take us into what in feminist trauma theory, we call the deficiency praxis, which is what we're trying to break in feminist trauma theory, the way that so many of us are taught that we're deficient because of what we've survived, when really we're just courageous survivors for surviving. This energy is that. It is empowering. It is recognizing your strengths. It is healing. It is deeply transformative on a soul level, and it is an air trine. Again, embracing, if you get carried into wanting to write and journal, those types of journal sits when suddenly you're just working through something that you didn't even know you needed to work through. If any of that air, the impulse to write comes, it's an opportunity to restory the self that could be quite powerful. Okay. And again, these are outer planets. The energy can be intense. It can be bursts. And then we usually need to rest and recover a little bit as well. And that also might just be the case as you're coming out of that Virgo New Moon, because it was a lot. And it is setting us up for the intensity of eclipse season, which is also signaled by Saturn at the end of this week, moving back into Pisces, back into the ocean, releasing enforced effort and boundaries in order to ultimately return to cosmic soup, where it needs to kind of dissolve. And then in February, we move through the final rebirthing. Okay, and that is an intensity that is coming, but here we're releasing. And we're releasing so that we can further release structures of the self that we are not taking forward. So this is important because we have had an intense Mercury retrograde. We just had an intense Virgo New Moon. We've had an intense few weeks leading up to our eclipse season. And now reframe some of that intensity. What have you been shown you're releasing? Especially in the structures of your own self, identity, agency, how you own your life. Because that's what Saturn also brings us into. Also what we're maturing into. There is something about this Saturn and this final journey through Pisces for now that is about letting go of aspects of your old kind of, there's something potentially a little naive that is dissolving, so that that rebirthing of the fire witch, who is not naive, but is of a different plane, can fully come in 2026. And Saturn's going into the ultimate wisdom of all that is. This is Alpha Omega. This is all, the eternal present. This is the final degrees of Pisces. And there's also grief there. And there is depth that is immeasurable. And Saturn likes to know the boundary. It likes to know where the bottom is because it needs to plan. It needs its winter reserves. It needs this. It needs its soul winter reserves. And it's going back into Pisces where there's no sea in the bottom. But this is why it's releasing the illusion of control that we just don't actually have, and coming more aligned with our true soul self. And that is ultimately what is being birthed as we move into 2026 with Saturn and Neptune. And there we have it. So I'm going to leave you with that. Gus and I are going to leave you, sending lots of love, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.